Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. It's an interactive show that deals with the big stories for the day. My name is Benalave. Thank you so much for being with us. So, after a number of arrests of high-profile media personalities and people who broadcast for publishing information considered to be false, there are many who feel that there is a gradual going back to the criminal libel law, not the law in itself, but the application of a law in our criminal statutes. Tonight we delve into the issue to look what really has gone on with these 4 or 5 persons who've been arrested for these issues. What is the police angle to these arrests, and what is the law saying about how to treat people who publish such information? And are we going back to the dark days where criminal libel made the work of journalists much more difficult? We'll be delving into that matter with 3 very erudite guests. Stay with us.
Woke up this morning.
Nothing wakes me up better than a cup of cowbell coffee. Delicious coffee aroma.
How can you forget your lines again?
I'm sorry, sir, just that it tastes really good.
Cowbell coffee.
Enjoy the delicious creamy coffee taste of 3-in-1 cowbell coffee.
It's a beautiful day.
Waiting.
Cowbell coffee. Taste it, love it.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
So welcome back. Tonight we'll be finding out from the police the reasoning behind the arrest of some high-profile people for publishing what is considered false news. What law are they working under? What are they trying to achieve with these arrests? We'll also speak to the National Media Commission on whether these issues are of concern to them or not. And then we'll speak to the man who founded the Media Foundation for West Africa on what this means by way of media trends, and he'll give us the historicity of these matters. In studio, I have the newly minted DCOP, Kwesi Fori, Director General Public Affairs, Ghana Police Service. I believe your DCOP requires congratulations. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Hope you are well. Fantastic. We also have lawyer George Sapong, who is the Executive Secretary of the National Media Commission, who is the body in charge of resolving media issues. George, great to have you. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And congrats, Kwesi.
Yes. And we have on the video link Professor Kwame Kakari, considered by many one of the doyens of media in Ghana, the founder of Media Foundation for West Africa. We've called him out of leave or retirement to throw light on a very important issue for the media fraternity. Prof, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Well, Prof, we believe you have to put on your mic. We can see you, but just say good evening to us so we hear you loudly. Okay, while he fixes that, the show is interactive. Get in touch with your comments on the numbers we'll put on the screen. So I believe there are about 3 or 4 issues to look into. By way of updates, DCOP. So I think there are a couple of things. So you sent a release on Bobie Osei, so Bobie Ansa. This was on February 10. I'm just reading what you put out. Accra FM journalists arrested. Police pursue 3 others for publication of false news. The Accra Regional Police Command on February 10 arrested Kwabena Bobie Ansa, a presenter with Accra FM, for failing to honor police invitations following a case of publication of false news reported against him. Police report indicates that the suspect on January 11, 2022, while hosting the Citizen Show on Accra FM, together with 3 others, allegedly made several statements against some individuals. Police investigated the said statements and found them to be false. The suspect and others involved in the case were invited to assist the police with the investigation on several occasions, but they failed to honor the invitation, hence the arrest. The suspect will be put to court on Monday. Meanwhile, efforts are being made to arrest the 3 other suspects. So that was the case of Kwabena Bobie Ansa. Then there's also the issue of Ohiniba Boama, whose matter ended up in a conviction. And I'm just reading the police statement on December the 14th. The CID on Monday, December 14, arrested a suspect, Ohiniba Boama, a radio presenter with Power 97.9, a Femina Kra. He's 36 years of age, alleged to have insulted and issued series of threats to the president, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo and the Commander-in-Chief of Ghana Armed Forces, which was shared on his Facebook page. The suspect was officially arrested on his arrival for further investigation. He's been cautioned on the offense of offensive conduct conducive to the breach of the peace and publication of false news. So we see this again, contrary to Section 207, 208, respectively, of the Criminal and Other Offences Act 2960. We do know that later on he was convicted on the charge of contempt of court. It appears the Attorney General did not agree with this charge or did not think that this charge was worth pursuing. So he went on contempt and secured a 13-day prison sentence. Then there's the matter of Mensa Thompson of Asepa. And his was really a publication of a material on his Facebook page, which material he subsequently removed. He retracted and apologized for, but he was still arrested and granted bail to the sum of 50,000 cedis. Some people even think we should add the Captain Smart case. Some people feel it to be a stretch, but just because Captain Smart, so this is Mensa Thompson we put on the screen there. His lawyer, Kojo V. Adawudu, was in court with him. He was given bail. And again, the charge was publication of false news. And all of this has happened within a month of each other, if you put all together. Now, some people want us to add Captain Smart. I'm just reading that to give some context before we come into the issues. The police on Thursday, December 9, arraigned Captain Smart at Circuit Court 7. He pleaded not guilty to the charge of offensive conduct constituted to a breach of the peace under Section 207 of the Criminal Offences Act. And then some other details are given. All right. I will not add the Vomawo yet because it's on a different length. But this EOP, just to be sure I've read the right thing. So I'm starting with Bobie Ansa. He was arrested on February 10 for failing to honor police invitation. And he was arrested while hosting a show. And he made some statements against some individuals. You said the statement was false. He is to assist the police investigations. Is this all we have to know about the Bobie Ansa case from the police perspective? Is there more than what I've just read?
Okay. First and foremost, let me say that the Bobie Ansa case is before court, and as such, I cannot, overhaul, the entire case. But for your information and your listeners, I believe that the police arrested him after he woefully failed, to honor our invitation. And that was done, to tell him that with all the respect, given to him, to avail himself for questioning. He failed to do that, and we went in and then got him. And then he was questioned and charged for court on false publication. I believe that the police taking an individual or group of persons to court is a fair ground where they can contest their case. It is not a question of just mere arrest and putting them behind bars. No. But we go into the court, and we know we are in a democratic environment, and the court is the appropriate place to go. So far, we are on course, and we have a duty, a job to perform, as a foremost law enforcement agency, to make sure that we deal with issues that might create insecurity, issues that might create fear and panic in our society.
I see. So his charge was for publication of false news.
Exactly.
Publication of false news implicita.
And he's now contesting it in court.
I see.
And at the end of it all, I believe that.
So this
court
publication of
will
false
act.
news is under Section 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act. Am I correct?
Yeah, correct.
Publication of false news. So what is the police's working definition of that? So what I mean, I know you're not a lawyer. I believe you are not. But if you say somebody's published false news, what is the working definition you use for you to believe that somebody is doing this?
We believe that journalists have a responsibility. Stories that they carry must carry the truth. And oftentimes, what do we see? People go out there with our basic facts and prosecute people on radio, television, and other networks. And when complaint is lodged and there is no iota of truth in it, then the police, insofar as the law remains in our books, the police may act on it, and it is up to the court to determine whether we are right or not. So we have a duty and a responsibility, to perform, and that is what we are doing for now. And let me say that the police is now all out, to enforce all laws of the country, not only in relation to the media. You might have noticed our actions in our anti-robbery operations, fighting all manner of crimes, to make sure that our society is
So
safe.
must somebody report to you that, or must there be a complaint about a publication before you act on it, or can the police on its own determine that what Ben Adabla is saying on the City Breakfast Show is false, and therefore they would arrest him?
Okay, for instance, in the Vomao case, for instance, where he published something on his Facebook page, the police has a responsibility to investigate such matters, even without a complaint, and when it borders on state security, likely to create insecurity, likely to damage the constitutional order and establishment of this country, the police has every right, to investigate. But oftentimes, the cases that we investigate, we have complainants, witnesses in it, where we adduce evidence and move ahead when we want to go to court.
I see. I noticed that Vomao's charge is not publication of false
Oh,
news.
no.
His has to do with treason felony.
Schoolmongering.
Yeah, but I noticed you use the word breach of the peace, which means you are coming under 207 as well. So if I make a post on Facebook, which you think is conducive to the breach of the peace, you believe I can be arrested, even if it's true?
Yes, this is what I'm saying, is that when you make a publication where there is that likelihood that most people might read, and it might create that sense of insecurity or breach the peace and order of our community or country, the police has every right. And as I said, the court is a fair ground where we can contest. And when it goes that way, either the police win or the suspect get it right. So there is nothing to fear. It is not a question. The police is not doing anything, to put fear into the media or to cow the media down or to prevent the media in its operations. All that we are saying is that the journalists must be responsible, should make sure that things put out there are in line with good practice.
I noticed this law doesn't mention journalists. So does that mean that any individual who publishes false news can be arrested?
But because looking at your introduction, as if police has something to do with reporters, media, broadcasters, and so forth, that is why I'm putting that to. But anybody.
But who determines whether the news is false or not?
Oh, during investigations, evidence might be adduced.
During investigation?
Yeah, during investigation, police will do that. Because without investigations...
Does an investigation require an arrest? Do you need to arrest me to investigate what I've said?
Let me say that, for instance, in the Bobie case, for instance, we stated in our release that the police invited him several times and he turned our invitation down. And the option is to go in and arrest him. And there are other options. For instance, when you fail to turn up, the police can send the case to court, where a bench warrant even will be issued. And that, when it comes that way, that person might be incarcerated, under the orders given by the court. So we have several options. We can go in for arrest, we can go in for a bench warrant, or even serve a criminal summons to the person to appear before a court of competent jurisdiction. Yes.
I see. All right. So it's quite clear, Section 207 and 208, you rely heavily upon those, and you believe whether the person is... I'm asking because there are people who feel that, for example, a minister makes a statement about COVID-19, which later turned out to be untrue. If he made this statement live on Ghana television, we could say he published false news. Why haven't you gone to arrest him?
Such a matter has not come before us. And all that we are saying is these are specific allegations made against some individuals. Specific allegations which perhaps after investigation are not true. And when it comes to that level, the police need to act. And I'm saying that going to the court, there is nothing wrong with the court.
I see.
The court is the final arbiter. And I think as citizens, we should respect that institution and go by that. All
right. Not to go into all the cases, and Judge and Prof, please allow me. I'm just trying to build a basis for the discussion. The second case is Asepa's Mensah Thompson. He is accused of having made a publication on his Facebook page, which he later found to be untrue. So we are told that he retracted and apologized for the statement he made. In fact, he made an allegation and then asked the military to confirm this was true or not. And before the military actually came out to say it was untrue, he suo moto went to retract and apologize. Yet he was still invited, arrested, and granted bail. What is the reasoning behind that?
One thing is he was not immediately available to the police. The police invited him. The police tried getting him until his lawyer, brought him to the police station, and he was cautioned and charged for court. But I believe that even if he has rescinded his earlier decision of accusing those that he leveled allegation against, the court still has jurisdiction to hear him and deal with it. And it is not a question where the police will tolerate such sensitive issues, in our domain. So the court is a fair ground, to iron out such cases.
So, George, it seems to me the police is using a lot of discretion here. They decide what is false. They decide whether the matter deserves their attention. Of course, he says sometimes there can be a complaint. But just listening to what I've heard so far, it seems the way he interprets the law places give the police a lot of degrees of freedom to decide whether to investigate this, that, or the other.
As I discussed with you before I came on the show, my interest, honestly, is not to discuss these very specific cases, but rather what they represent. Okay. And everything that I've heard from the police side, from civil society, from journalists, from advocates, it seems to me that everybody is scaffolding the theater. We are leaving what the core issue is and just tinkering on the edges. Anytime within a society you begin to see this trend, it should signal to you that the problem is elsewhere. And what is the problem? It's a clear indication of the lack of a comprehensive framework for media regulation. So what has happened is that everybody who feels frustrated by some kind of media behavior is seeking the solution that is within their ambit to deal with it. And I want you to take a broader historical view of it. Take all agencies of state, whether it's the military, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the executive, whether it's the legislature. So when Parliament had issues about Egbert Fable and Professor Dudu some time ago, Parliament had to resort to its powers of contempt to hold them before Parliament. We have seen instances where judges or the entire judiciary has had to rely on the court's power of contempt to address media and speech-related issues that deal with them. We have seen situations where the police have come at people for speaking against them. You recall the incident much earlier of Ambassador Cabral, cases like Kaloan from the Ghana Armed Forces. Essentially, what has happened is that because we do not have a unified framework for addressing these issues, anytime somebody comes under media stress, the first thing they would do is to say, within my power, what can we do? And it's a global phenomenon. So when you see executive arm responses or interventions that involve the police, Bernard, you should understand that it is likely to happen unless the bigger problem is addressed. And the last thing that I want to put on the table is something that in regulation and amongst media experts we call the Cyber Proposition 2, which states that anytime society comes under stress, the tendency to contract media freedom is extremely high. So for us at National Media Commission, we have been anticipating what is happening now for the past 2 years.
Really?
And it's going to get worse.
Are you
Sincerely.
serious?
Oh, I'm serious about it. What is going to happen as the next step that we should prevent is that you have seen that those who I've given you the examples from different sectors of society. When ordinary people get in, and we have a lot of examples from Latin America, in their case, it is going to be direct mob action against individual journalists and media houses. That's the trend. So I am more worried about our lack of appreciation of the context and the idea that everybody picks a strand of it without having a comprehensive view. So when I say we are scaffolding the theater, essentially it's like we're at a theater where there is poor lighting and poor sound. Instead of we addressing that so everybody can sit in their seat and enjoy the show, everybody is moving closer, beginning to build scaffolds in order to be able to see the theater. Instead, what we need to do is to calmly retreat and to say, what has caused all these issues? If all of us understood that this is where we are and that we're able to develop that kind of framework that dealt with it, I can assure you that we wouldn't get to that point where all these little things that are worrying us would happen.
So I notice you want to take a more general view to things. I'll grant you that. When we come back, I'll ask Professor Kakari what he makes of the developments so far. This is the point of view. We're trying to understand the specific nature of some of the cases that have been brought against not just media practitioners, but civil society activists. And we're asking whether the days of criminal libel are back. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Mama Josie. Fe.
Different era, better result. Time has changed and time has brought Kel Charcoal Toothpaste, healthy gums, anti-cavity, fresher breath, and it whitens teeth. Kel Chocolate Toothpaste. Sankofa.
Yenchi. Kel Chocolate Toothpaste.
Happy smile.
whatever the occasion, with ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.
I woke up this morning.
Nothing wakes me up better than a cup of cowbell coffee. Delicious coffee aroma.
How can you forget your lines again?
I'm sorry, sir, just that it tastes really good.
Cowbell coffee.
Enjoy the delicious creamy coffee taste of 3-in-1 Cowbell
Taste
coffee.
it, loving. It's a beautiful day.
Waiting.
Cowbell coffee. Taste it, loving.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Welcome back to The Point of View. So tonight we're asking, is the police being overzealous in the application of the law, particularly sections 207 and 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, or is it a question of media recklessness? A combination of the two? Are we back to the dark days of criminal libel? Professor Kwame Kakari, thanks for joining the program. You know a lot of the history of Ghana's media. When you put these developments together, what is your view on what's going on?
The law has been around for ages. And let me just say that there has been a lot of recklessness in our media and in public communication by too many people, both in the media, politicians, and so on. There's a lot of recklessness. I mean, when we are defending people's freedoms of speech and media, that is not to say that we are unaware of the unprofessionalism, the recklessness, and the abuses of those freedoms. We are aware of them and we don't condone them. But this law has been around for a very long time. It's been around certainly during these Fourth Republic years. Why is it now that the police are raking up this law and arresting journalists left and right? Because the kinds of things, of expressions that the police are basing the law on to arrest these people, examples have abounded. Now, again, the use that you asked Mr. Ofori about how the police define false news. That is one aspect of the problem when the police begin policing speech. The tendency is for them to be arbitrary. You see, because in the cases we are talking about, you notice that these expressions based on which the people have been arrested are all targeted at the executive or government. But so the police telling us that those media that belong to politicians favoring the government don't have people making these reckless statements against people in opposition and so on. So in other words, the police, in using such a law, the police is not the right instrument to define what is false news. So the police intervening in matters of speech would almost always tend to be arbitrary and selective. And in our parts of the world, they are likely to do so only when it's in the interest and favor of the ruling government. You know, so I will not say we are going back necessarily willy-nilly to the very dark days of the culture of silence. But when the police intervene in policing speech, their very participation in such an act drives so many people into silence. because the police, the image of the police is fear, and so I do not know what has happened that our police, especially now that with Dr. Dampari's administration, the police are beginning to gain quite some public approval and acclaim. They are suddenly on this mission of silencing media that they consider arbitrarily to be propagating.
So, Prof, was it a mistake when we repealed the criminal libel law to leave Section 207 and 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act untouched? Was it? In fact, I think I recall Professor Obed Asamoah many years ago say to journalists that they should not think that the repeal of the criminal libel law means that they are out of the woods yet. And he actually made a reference to some aspects of the criminal code which could still be used to using my own words, haunt them. So
Yes.
Was it a mistake that these two sections were not dealt with while we were trying to repeal the criminal libel law when President Kufuor became president?
I will not say it was a mistake. The reform of the criminal libel, the repeal of those laws, were specifically targeted by the Ghana Journalists Association and allied organizations that supported that. So I suppose that in the activities for reform, that was what was targeted because that was what had been used. Of course, there are still other legislation on the books, like Official Secrets Act, for instance. When a government is in very deep crisis, when a government's back is to the wall for so many reasons, they could rake up a number of legislation that are still on the books. The problem that I find is that when we got those laws repealed, it seems that the community of media owners and practitioners went to sleep over those other legislation, such as the one we are grappling with now, thinking that everything was now cool and we could go to sleep. But the law is almost always a labyrinth with so many channels that are not readily known to the ordinary eyes of the public.
While we do not condone falsehood and lies about public officials, could it be that civil libel, the people in civil matter to seek to either get the person who made the statement to retract or to get some sort of compensation, doesn't seem enough? Because in the case of Bobie Ansah and also in another case, it appears these allegations affected people either in the executive or close to them. Is it that civil libel is no longer effective as a deterrent?
And you see, the example of those cases that affect people in the executive or people closely related to the executive is very instructive. And when that kind of thing happens, when people are arrested in relation to such acts, it makes it's a sure way of minimizing or affecting the image of the executive. So when the police are seen to be arresting people in such matters, they become very poor, very, very negative for the image of the government or the executive. And this is one reason why, even for a government's own image and standing in the society and in the international arena, they should minimize using the police to police speech. It reminds us of what happened to Kweku Baako and Nata Haruna and so on. You remember that some of those cases had to do with the spouse of the then head of state. So that readily makes people accuse, say, the President Kufuor as the one ordering the police to do these things. But to your question, I must say that people may not choose the path of court to sue in matters of defamation, if they have very ready access for a very quick fix or punishment of the people who have committed those offenses against them. After all, some people go to the courts to sue as a gold mine. Others use it for political purposes, and others use it for purposes of simply, silencing people they don't like. So those people who do not need the money from the suit, if they have access to high power, they will use the power and show people where power lies.
Fair enough.
That's why using the police is always very.
Thank you, Prof. I'll come back to you. Let me come back to Decop. So I think two things he said, which I think you need to respond to. That it is never a good idea for police to regulate speech, because it appears you do it arbitrarily, and from the examples he's given, it's quite clear that it's when people close to the executive are affected that the police find it either necessary or expedient to effect an arrest or to investigate. And also the fact that you've been using this particular law it's not as if you're using it consistently over the past 6 years as an administration. It's become very rampant probably in the past year. So you need to respond to that. Policing speech, and then also your decisions as to when to use the law. What's your reaction?
Well, thank you very much. I believe that the police have been fair to all manner of persons in this country. When a complaint is lodged, where it could be referred in a criminal code, the laws are there. The police has not done anything out of the blue, right? Even as Prof said, the charges and the laws are situated in our books. And when those things are there and they've not been repealed, and an individual comes to the police station, to lodge a complaint against false publication, any individual, it is not a question of people in authority. It's very unfortunate for that to be referred to. But in a manner, you see, most of our cases, when we come to the police station, ordinary people even comes in there to lodge complaint and is sent to the court. Perhaps the media might not get, info pertaining to that. But I can tell you that the media has a responsibility. We all need to agree. The three of us sitting here are media personnel, and we know that we have a responsibility to make sure that truth, facts are accurate, and things are done properly in line with contemporary journalism and broadcasting. And when things are done haphazardly, it creates a problem. For instance, let me use this opportunity to say that we met the media leader, the Ghana Journalists Association leadership, Primpag, and the independent broadcasters. And they all agree in principle that yes, there is some extent of media irresponsibility.
But did they not tell you were applying it selectively? Because you are saying if somebody publishes... Let me push this, because see, the meeting of the media is not the problem. For example, in February 10, just let me read a story for you. A lot of fact-checking organizations did a fact-check on the Minister of Health's claim at a press conference last week. The Minister of Health had said that the World Health Organization had assessed Ghana among the best countries in the world in COVID-19 management. The minister said WHO ranked Ghana top together with South Korea as the countries that manage COVID well across the globe. But the media had not been reporting that feed by government. Now, the Fourth Estate checked with all the rankings, right? There was nowhere that this claim that Ghana was among the top 2 people who managed COVID-19 was found to be true. Did the police find it interesting to invite the minister and say, you made a statement on a public platform that Ghana was the best or second best in COVID-19 management? This statement has been found to be false. Therefore, you published false news. Because he spoke on live television. Why haven't you gone to, if you are applying this thing without fear or favor, why haven't you gone to even have a conversation with him? If you are determined to check false news.
Maybe let me make a small point here. even though it's not my issue, but I have a responsibility. I think when we speak of Section 208, there is overemphasis on the falsity of the news. But that is not the gravamen of the law. What the law says is that any person who publishes or reproduces any statement, rumor, or report which is likely to cause an alarm to the public, you understand, or to disturb the public peace, you understand, Bernard, or having reason to believe that the statement or rumor is false. So these are the critical elements. The falsity is one element. The likelihood of disturbing the public peace is the other element. Do you understand?
Which is still within their discretion.
No,
which is why I asked the first question.
The point, Kwesi needs to respond to that. But I just want to draw attention to the fact that when you raise this issue with Prof about why did we leave this law, there was a very important reason why these were not the laws that were of consequence, because there were legitimate circumstances where these laws could be applied. You recall the statement, the 1919 statement of Oliver Wendell Holmes in the US, Southern fire in a crowded theater. There are certain circumstances where speech has immediate danger. So let us, I think that most people may not recall this, but a couple of years ago, almost about 10 or so years ago, somebody started rumor in the night about an impending earthquake. That set the whole Accra on edge. That turned out to be false. Okay. Those are the kinds of circumstances that legislations like these are designed for. Where, for example, during, say, COVID, somebody deliberately distorts information that creates public anxiety, that creates problems. Those are the kinds of situations that legislations like these are designed for. Not for the kind of situation where a statement is made and it is proven to be false, and therefore on the basis of the falsity, you understand? Because the requirement of the law is that there must be that likelihood, you understand, of disturbing the public peace. So when you discuss the things, I just want to draw everybody's attention to the fact that two things. Number one is that it was not an oversight that this particular piece of this provision was left in the criminal.
But to the extent that it's being misapplied,
that's not my comment on it.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to explain
but in explaining a law's basis and then in seeing its uses in practice, clearly you should be concerned that it continues to exist in the form in which it is.
To tell you the truth, for us at National Media Commission and for almost every regulator, our biggest worry is generally in any kind of legislation that targets journalists or speakers or writers directly. The best form of legislation that contains speech are those that encourage gatekeeping processes. So within the profession, we have two approaches. Legislation that is progressive would target the institutional setup so that the institution itself will develop the internal gatekeeping processes that sanitize their productions. You understand? So anytime you have a piece of legislation that targets individual journalists, we say it creates a chilling effect. So my general concern is that from a pure regulatory point of view and within the ambit of free expression, those kinds of legislations, interestingly, our journalists tend to accept a reverse. So that I remember some earlier conversation with you in which I was pointing out to you provisions in the Electronic Communications Act that target journalists and insulate operators, which therefore reverses the good
practice. So you are saying that for the best practices for the publisher,
yes,
the organization to be responsible,
yes,
not the individual speaking.
Exactly. So anytime you see a piece of legislation that is targeting the person speaking, there's a problem with it.
Because then the person publishing or the newspaper or the radio station should have more responsibility and to impress upon people who come on the platform to speak the truth.
Exactly.
So they have a bigger responsibility than the person who may be misguided.
Exactly. And then they also create a buffer between the individual speaker or journalist against the state and society. So the journalist can do his work. There is no threat directly from society to that journalist. The journalist is operating outside the walls, of the state. And so any kind of attack that is coming, he is insulated from it. But because he's working within an institutional system, that system then develops the gatekeeping processes that works with them to make sure that what is produced is right.
When we come back, I'll let Dikop answer my question and also ask you and Prof whether we need to remove this law or whether it has to be amended based on the way it's been applied. This is the point of view. Stay with us.
Welcome once again to Malaria 360. Our attention is on how to stay away from malaria when pregnant. Number 1, as soon as you realize you're pregnant, visit an antenatal care clinic early and regularly. Number 2, adopt the habit of sleeping under an insecticide-treated net. Number 3, eat sufficient meals full of the right nutrients. Number 4, sulfadoxine pyrimethamine, SP, is safe for both the pregnant woman and the unborn child. Ensure that you take all your doses of SP at the advice of your healthcare worker for a malaria-free pregnancy. If you have to visit the health facility, adhere to all the COVID-19 safety protocols in place. COVID-19 is real, and so is malaria. Zero malaria starts with me and you.
Hello, information. Me, I have still not got the money for that list of expensive building materials you sent to me. The price of the iron rods have been increased too much, are they?
Madam, relax. Look, that's not why I even called you. I just visited IPCP, where the engineers told me everything about Trasacco fast floor.
Chawanko, please, those people are expensive. Are they not the people building those big houses in town? I beg going to catch
Madam, in fact, I used to think the same until I visited their office today, and they gave me an estimate of how much it will cost. Yomo, the estimate is real. It's cheaper than the one I even sent you.
Wow.
Building contractors, foremen, masons. Visit IPCP, the Trasacco Fast Floor. Engineers will assist you build an affordable, faster, and stronger building.
Oh, madam. It is done.
Wow.
Trasacco Fast Floor. Stronger, faster, and affordable.
This is a Trasacco construction product.
Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we're trying to look at some key issues that have come up, particularly in respect of arrest of media practitioners. There's Mensah Thompson, there's Bobie and Sa. There's also the issue that has to do with Ohene Babuama. He's been jailed for contempt. The statements he made were connected to both the sitting president and the armed forces. I think we spent enough time looking at your exercise of discretion. I just wanted to ask quickly about the Vomawa case, because this is something he wrote on Facebook, and the police have gone and something else. You are treating this as treason felony, and he's not been granted bail. Any quick thinking behind the refusal to grant him bail? I mean, he's a public person, he's known fairly internationally and stuff like this. What's the thinking behind the prosecution's view that he should not be granted bail?
Okay. Granting of bail is the domain of the court, not the police. And I believe that the court, in its wisdom, took a decision. But all that I can say is that we are all aware that we live in a democratic environment. There is a constitutional establishment and order. And for an individual or group of persons, to sit down and decide that there should be an alternative, that or the alternative should use a lawful means of overturning a constitutional order is a serious issue. that no law enforcement agency in the world will sit down aloof. Definitely they might be interested. For instance, it is the constitutional order that grants all the facility that we've seen in terms of freedom of speech, liberties, fundamental human rights, among others, and good governance, good practices. Therefore, for such an individual to pace that, and we know what the social media does, putting it out there generates some discussion, and generating discussion which have the tendency or likelihood to affect the constitutional and democratic arrangement of this country. The police, being the foremost internal law enforcement agency, should be interested. We have a responsibility to the Constitution.
Must it always start with an arrest? Because you always say we are investigating. It seems to me as if the Ghana police, an investigation begins with an arrest. Whereas you can investigate something, and then when you get to a point where you are convinced that the person is required, but almost at the beginning of in all the cases I mentioned, your first action was to arrest the person, and then you say we are investigating.
Police have that discretionary power to deal with issues regarding arrest, going for a court summons, or even going for a bench warrant, and what have you. But in this case, issues that threatened the constitutional order of this country is a very serious matter that because we are enjoined, to protect the Constitution and its values. And police arresting such a person, taking him to court, to a fair ground to contest. I believe that the police rather should be commended, for coming out with such proactive steps.
Okay.
And I believe that we should respect the decision of the police, and we should look up to the court, to come out, and whatever it comes out with. I believe that the good people should respect that. And I believe that the judge not granting him bail does not, come from the police, though the prosecutor might have made his case. But we know that the court
obviously
has
listens
every
to both
right,
sides. No,
let
me come to Prof finally. Prof, is it time the media forces came together to ask for this law to be removed? I think you hinted this on Saturday when you said that there was a conversation Media Foundation I wanted to initiate, which the GIBA and the GJ did not appear interested. Do you feel this is the right time for this conversation around 207 and 208?
I hope the owners of broadcast media or media generally and the Ghana Journalists Association will be interested in a conversation to reform this law. I don't believe it should be jettisoned completely from the books. I think it can be refined in such detail that journalists or people making certain speeches will not be so arbitrarily treated. George's explanation or analysis of the law, the core interest of the law is very useful. So I don't think we should throw it overboard, but it can be reformed. Now, my experience dealing with the GJ and the GIBA tells me that GIBA, for instance, has never been and is not interested in self-regulation. We have attempted to sit with them to develop instruments and mechanisms for policing their own members. They threw us out virtually. They were not interested. This was at a seminar in Dodoa a few years ago. They were not interested. They are still not interested. You can see how owners of media are not interested in protecting their employees when they are in trouble. I hope now they will want to take this matter seriously. But again, there are so many issues concerning all the institutions of media. Take the National Media Commission, for instance. Its job now seems to be lame because why don't the people in authority or people who matter in society use the National Media Commission to arbitrate in some of these issues rather than going to the police and so on and so forth? We must strengthen the National Media Commission to become more effective. And I think the National Media Commission itself must also assert itself much more than they probably have been doing so far.
All right.
So we need to reform this law, not to throw it completely overboard, because some people in society could almost always use speech to misbehave and create difficulties for the whole community.
I think that's a good place to end. Thank you, Professor Kwame Kakari. He is the founder of Media Foundation for East Africa. We also had George Sapon, who is the Executive Secretary of Media Commission. Thank you for your insights. And of course, newly minted DCOP, Kwesi Ofori, Director General, Public Affairs, Ghana Police Service. Thank you as ever for being on the show. We hope we've added some insight to your knowledge of the topic. Coming up next is the Business Dashboard. My name is Ben Adable. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
The Point of View is brought to you by Cowbell Coffee. Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it. Kel Charcoal Toothpaste. Kel Charcoal. Happy smile.